So we talked about, not being a hypocrite and being a model for your children to be
Yep.
able to feel things.
Yep.
But what about for a partner or a parent who was raised by parents who suppressed all of their emotions, suppressed their kids' emotions? So now you're trying to, do you model for them too? Like, how do you encourage them to do it? Because, yeah.
Well, firstly, you've got to understand, that you've got to have a good, strong look at your desire to encourage somebody else to feel their feelings. Oftentimes, that desire to encourage them, as we call it, is actually selfish. You want something from it, some level of safety or security about you doing it, or you want some other things from it, like you want some personal things from it. So the very first thing you got to do is look at what's your motive. Is your motive selfish, or is it?
Well, specifically, I'll say with my dad, he's
Yep.
going through cancer right now. He's very sick.
Yeah.
And I know that it's emotional.
Yep.
And I have even an awareness of what some of those emotions are. And I've tried to be brave, and I've tried to,
Yep.
explain that to him from whatever little perspective I have.
Yeah. Does he want to hear?
Kind of. He was more actually open than I thought he would be. He was less aggressive than I thought he would be.
Yep.
But my only motivation is that he can help to heal himself.
No, it's not. Your emotion is right now. That's your motive. What's your real motive?
I feel like I can't heal him.
No, that's not it. What is your real motive? You can feel it. I can feel it from you. You can feel it.
I don't know.
You're afraid of him dying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's your motive. It's selfish. Sorry to say,
That's true.
Yeah. So that's going to make it a lot harder to help somebody. You're worried about him dying because of what he means to you and what he's done for you. And in fact, part of his cancer is because of what he's done for you, actually. A lot of people with cancer do things out of guilt on their part and to get things from their children or from other people. And as a result, the children or the other people continue to expect those things from that person. And the person, of course, is unwilling to give it up because of what they themselves want out of it. So, cancer has a dynamic where it's not just the person with cancer that's participant in the sin, but also every person around them participates in their sin.
Now, just because Jesus said it's selfish doesn't mean you should stop feeling it.
No.
Because actually you need to feel it.
You need to go through this grief
Yeah.
and not project it on your dad.
Yeah. Because
You
actually...
see, if you project it on your dad, if he does pass, he's going to find his life in the spirit world really difficult initially because he's going to always be coming back to you. Always be, he won't learn why he had the cancer. He'll just keep coming back to you and acting in the same emotion that caused his cancer in the first place. So it's not going to be good for him if you're projecting this grief onto him. And if your motive for talking to him about it is to stop him from dying, right, then the reality is the person with cancer wants to die. They're prepared to die in order to avoid an emotion inside of themselves. And they are willing to die rather than feel, actually. So when you projected him, don't die, don't die, don't die, he's going like he would rather die than feel something, and you're projecting him the very feelings he wants from you so that he doesn't have to feel some things. So actually it can cause the person with cancer to last longer on earth with their cancer and then pass in even more pain than they would have otherwise.
So how does that person, like you're saying, he'd rather die than feel those emotions, which I think is totally accurate.
Yeah.
But how does he feel those emotions if no one's helping
Well, he doesn't
him?
want to.
But how does he get to a point of wanting to?
Well, he's going to have to work through that himself. There's nothing you can do to help him to get to a point where he wants to. That's his problem, is he wants you to do that.
Yeah. The best thing that you can do to help in that process is to not meet your addictions with him.
Or his addictions with you.
Or his addictions with you.
Yeah.
Because there's addictive processes that he's engaged for a lot of his life to avoid feeling.
Yep.
And now that's getting harder and harder, and now he'd prefer to die than feel them.
Yep.
And And the difficulty with cancer is that often cancer creates all these big fears and worries and pain and suffering for the person, but fears and worries and grief in the people around them. And it causes the people
which the person who has the cancer likes.
Yeah, that it helps to meet the very addictions that were waning, if you like, in their life.
Yep.
And so you get drawn back into meeting the addictions, which actually worsens the person's condition.
And they last longer on earth as a result, in more pain and suffering when they pass.
Yeah.
But didn't you say before that it's the loving thing to do to point out the sin in someone else?
Only if they want to hear it.
Yeah.
You see, in an environment here where I'm here, this is my space. You're in my space. I hired this hall. This is my space. I'm responsible for this space. When you visit your father's home, he's responsible for his space, not you. And unless he's inviting you to engage in the process of understanding, then really to share with him would be really against his will. See, I'm assuming you coming into my space, I've made it very clear to all of you that we're going to talk about a certain set of things, right? And you're coming into my space. This is what we're talking about. And you can leave or stay. That's your choice, right? You can stay under the guidelines of my rules, right? Which are you need to be kind, considerate, ask questions freely like a child would, not project at me, and so forth. That's my rules. And if you don't abide by my rules, then you can leave. Right? But when it comes to you going into somebody else's space, so if my father was staying with me and expected me to look after him, now I'm talking to him. But if my father is by himself or in a hospice or some other place and he's not being cared for by me and he's not forcing himself upon my space, then I have no right really to talk to him. I can raise the issue just kindly, but anything further than that, I'm breaking his will.
But it's interesting what you're saying, because you're sort of saying, I want to show him, I tell him what the sin is, but you're still engaged in the sin with him.
That's right. You're engaged in your part of it.
My job is to not support any of your sin, whether I'm in your house or not. Like, so if I'm in your house, I'm sinning if I support your sin.
Correct.
So
But it would be unwise for me still to say that to you.
I don't have to say anything.
I don't have to say anything.
It's more important that I don't support your sin through my feelings, through my actions. And so this is where it gets tricky when people hear divine truth, because they're like, well, I've got to tell everyone everything, but they're still engaged in the sin, rather than saying, I've got to deal with my sin so that I don't support sin in myself or anybody else. And then there will be opportunities and there will be occasions where it's perfectly loving to speak about what's going on.
Yep.
But if I'm speaking about it while still supporting the sin in myself or another person, I may as well not speak anyway, because it's going to have no effect, apart from making things confusing and angry sometimes.
So what is the sin that I'm supporting?
No, just saying a sec. Before you continue, you also don't understand that when you're in an environment where there's a person in front of you and they're in distress of some kind, but it's caused by their own addictions and desires, obviously if I speak the truth to them, I've got to be very careful that I'm not motivated by lies in myself.
Yeah.
And at the moment, the lie in yourself is, I don't want to feel my grief, Dad. I don't want you to die. So if you were being truthful with your dad, you would have to say, Dad, I don't want you to die. You know, that's the truth. You really couldn't go much further than that and you said, Dad, I think I know the reason why you're dying. Do you want to do something about it? Right? That's about as far as you could go.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Now, what was your question? Sorry.
No, I guess you just answered it. I said, what is the sin that I'm engaging in?
That's right.
Well, it's that, and also the codependence between you and your dad.
Yeah. Which is actually breaking your soulmate bond actually too.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean by that?
Sure do.
You have a stronger relationship with your father than with any other man, right?
My husband would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not good, is it?
Nope.
No. So basically that's what I'd call an emotionally incestuous relationship with your father. Yep. And those kind of relationships are very damaging and cause disease actually frequently. And they're very damaging in your relationship with a partner too, because the partner's always going to feel like he's second man. Right? And the issue is with the soulmate bond or even partnership, unless this person is the most important person in my life, I shouldn't be with them, right? You know, and many of us don't realise how attached we are to our mums and dads until they die. And then we have huge grief that comes up at their death. And often that grief is much higher than the grief of the death of a partner. Yeah. And that's all indicative of there being a codependent addiction with the opposite gender parent. And it's frequent that boys have this with their mothers and girls with their fathers.
So where do you even start to break that?
Well, that's going to require you working through and healing what we call the intergender emotional injuries that a person has. And one of those injuries, obviously affecting you, is you feel that your dad passing affects your safety and security in some way, right? Your emotional safety and security in some way, and your dependency upon him for approval from him. And so your definition as a woman is very much defined by how much your dad approves of you and how much he cares about you, right? And it's not dependent on that actually, but that's how you feel. Does that make sense? And so these are the things to start working through that will help him, and it will also help him when he passes. Because when at the moment, if he passes, he's going to feel he'll still continue to want this relationship with his daughter, even though he's in the spirit world. And as a result, the very emotional injury that caused his cancer will continue after he passes. So he will still have a degradation in those areas of his body. You know where his cancer began, right? Where did it begin?
His colon.
Yep. What's that about? For your dad, what's that about? Colon, about?
I think it's anger, but I don't know.
Well, worth. It's about getting his worth. So he's getting his worth by doing things for people. He's getting his worth, right? And that's how he got to be viewed by everybody as a great guy.
Yep.
Yeah, but actually from God's perspective, he hasn't done it from the right motive. And so from God's perspective, he hasn't learnt how to be a great guy yet, right? Even though you think he is a great guy. Yeah. And because he's done things for you and other people, all of you love him, right? You're terribly upset about him getting cancer, but actually it's been caused by his own desire to feed this addiction through actions taken, giving his energy to everybody, right? In order to get some worth for himself. Colon is his bowel.
Where your poo comes out.
Where your poo comes out, yep. That makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah. So I hope what I've said hasn't offended you too much, because what I'm saying is like definite, but every one of God's principles governing the operation of the soul, whenever you shut down emotions in a certain way, disease is the subsequent result. Right? So all cancers actually are completely curable as long as the person dealt with the controlling emotion, controlling the emotion they're trying to control using addiction to control it. As long as they deal with that, curable, every single one, curable. Your body has been designed to cure itself by God. And so when it doesn't, it's because of an intention that you are engaged in yourself. If that makes sense to everyone? You've got to remember, God's perfect. He designed a perfect body. He didn't design it to fail. He designed it to succeed. He designed it to work. He designed it not to get disease. The first human couple lived nearly 1,000 years and they never had a disease. Right? God designed it to be perfect. Any imperfection that arises in your body is the result of either your own sin or the sin of someone else generationally that's been passed down to you. It's one of those two things. So the key is to deal with whatever those sins are, if possible. Now, in some cases, for some people, it's not possible until they pass because they've been had a genetic deformity, for example, that now is imposed upon their life while they're here on earth. Some have had like some mental disability where they can't engage a process anymore because of the damage that comes from their forebears. They have, some kind of mental disturbance that causes them not to be able to be conscious of their choices and decisions so much. Even though that is the case, you can often help them, but those people will be cured when they pass. For the most part, if it's a generational deformity passed upon them, they'll be cured instantly, usually through a process that goes on in the spirit world in the first sphere. They are cured of any passed down genetic problems, and then what they're left with is their true emotional condition, right? But for the majority of us who are aware and intellectually able and are able to not control our emotion if we so choose, we need to make the decision ourselves. Yeah. Yep. But can you see disease? Consequence is trying to control specific emotion.
The cause.
The cause is trying to control specific emotion. The consequence, the disease. You try to control a specific type of emotion, the disease will appear in a specific place. The type of disease will depend upon the type of way in which you're trying to control the emotion. Like, so say a person gets a brain tumour, they're trying to control through their thoughts. If they get a problem in their lungs, they're trying to control through their grief. If they get a problem in their heart, they're trying to control probably grief through, with regard to love, the romantic love usually, or sometimes love of a parent, but most time romantic love. If they have a problem in their kidneys or their liver, it's going to be usually some kind of spirit-based attachment based upon history about what the person's trying to avoid with anger or rage. And every one of them is traceable. And every one of them, if a person has exactly the same problem, it's exactly the same cause. This is the beauty of law, is that this is what happens when it's broken. You get exactly the same effect. Yeah. So this is very important to understand. Yeah. Thanks.
On that, what would ALS be? What emotion of suppression would that?
Yep.
And is that genetic?
Yeah, what we need to do is define ALS for most people, I suppose, because
It's called different things in
it's called different things in different countries, isn't it?
Yeah.
Lou
Lou
Gehrig's.
Gehrig's. Yeah. So that's a gradual wasting of your physical.
Body, muscular system.
Eventually, it shuts down your respiratory system, isn't it? And that's the way that a person passes. But
Yep.
it's similar to MS in some ways. I don't think causally, but in presentation.
Yep.
In that we get a
Now, what's her name in Sweden had ALS, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's got a specific cause. You're asking what it is?
I'm asking sort of what emotion suppression would
Yep.
cause that one.
It's about being injured in some way emotionally, and instead of feeling the injury as grief, feeling it as rage.
and not expressing
And suppressing the rage.
Yeah, not expressing.
Not
that
expressing the rage.
Yeah. So it's actually an angry withdrawal from life.
Yeah.
But a slow process.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Makes sense? Yep. Sarah?
Could somebody heal ALS through
When you say could somebody, you mean the person?
the person who has
Certainly
ALS
the person could, yes.
by expressing their rage?
Yes.
And ultimately their grief.
Yes.
Like it's going to be a process.
The problem with some of
it's
these
not
motor neuron, though, is if you don't do it soon enough,
just- Yeah.
the mylar starts stripping off of your brain and all sorts of things start happening. And
Very hard.
and now it's very hard to recover from some of those things.
Yeah.
Right? You have to have a really good diet and other things like that in order to recover. And even then, there won't probably be a full recovery because some diseases like that, which are caused by some intense emotions, have the effect that you've stripped off certain functions of your brain and everything. And after a while, it sort of learns that that's what it's going to stay doing. And so it can recover, but to heal it properly would require someone at one with God to heal it, probably, along with the person's
Sincere desire.
sincere desire, obviously, to feel their rage. Unless they choose to feel their rage, nobody on earth or in the spirit world can heal them. Not who is in alignment with God, anyway. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. And then Timo.
And then down.
Yeah.
And what about the prostate cancer? And
What do you reckon? What do you reckon
think?
it might be? Sexual organs relating to cancer, what do you think it might be?
well, something relates to the expression of masculinity,
In
or something against, or even something with the other gender, especially the mother.
with the opposite gender, yes?
Yeah.
Yep. So what would it be? It's really using sexual feelings to gain feelings from the opposite gender, and pandering to the opposite gender in order to gain those feelings.
That's the sin.
That's the sin. Yeah. So
So engaging sexually so as to avoid certain feelings with women,
yeah,
or sort of putting yourself last in preference of the woman's desires and feelings
yep.
in order to get feelings from a woman.
In order to get sexual feelings from the woman.
Approval, like something like approval.
Well, sexual approval and sexual desire, yeah, from the woman, yeah. Yep. Highly likely the woman isn't giving it in the relationship as well. Well, like I said, most cancers involve the two people or more. Yep. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Now, I don't want this to be an answering
Yes,
session
now
of
it's
all
just
your
pop quiz.
diseases.
Yeah, yeah. Is that what it is, Tim?
Is that what it is?
You got one.
Well, yeah, let's go. One more.
Bladder cancer.
Bladder function?
Bladder cancer.
Bladder cancer, yes.
Maybe just talk about the dynamic of cancer, because that's common to all cancers.
Yeah, common to all cancers, there's a dynamic. So the dynamic is that you want a specific emotion from other people, and you're willing to work hard in a certain way to get it from the other person, so that you don't have to feel the opposite emotion yourself. So
often involves sacrifice of self, working very hard in certain areas in order to try to get this feeling from other people, and a huge resistance to giving up working for others, doing this addiction for others.
yeah,
Yeah.
And,
So-
and it's mainly based on their partner, that person, or would it
well,
be
there's usually a history with the opposite gender parent or the same gender parent. It depends what kind of cancer it is as to which gender you're doing the work with, which gender you're mostly interested in. So an example of that is for a woman who has breast cancer in the left breast, it's going to be about her relationship with her mother initially and what she does with women. But if she gets cancer first in her right breast, then it's going to be related to what she does with her father and what she does with men in order to get a feeling of love from
Being
them.
loved.
Being loved. Yeah. In the case of breast, it's about being loved. So often a woman will work hard for everyone in their family, but specifically for one gender in order to have a feeling of being loved, and that will cause breast cancer. And whatever the gender is will determine whether it's left or right breast. So every cancer has a cause that is traceable to an emotion, and every cancer has an emotion where you're wanting something from the person, and instead of just saying it outright to them, I want this from you, you do a whole heap of things to get it. Yeah. You understand? So like, let's say if I want sex from Mary, I could just go up to Mary and say, I want sex, darling, can you give me some? Couldn't I? But see, most of us are not brave enough to say things like that, right? So, and also, what if you get a knockback, right?
You might have to feel.
You might have to feel. So what you do instead is you bring her flowers and you cook her a meal and you do you understand?
Fix the car.
You fix the car, and she asks you to fix the roof, and so you get up on the roof and fix the roof, and
after the
she
kids
says
and
my
do
stove isn't working, get a new one. Yes, I get you a new one, and right, but it's all done because I just want sex. Do you know what I mean? And this is what drives many relationships, right? And so I do all of those things and she's going, oh, he's wonderful, he does whatever I want, I'll give him some sex now. All right? So it requires two of us participating in the dynamic. Obviously, Mary would feel herself in that place to sort of be in a position of power, and I'm sort of being subservient, but I'm doing it in a very sneaky way. And it's all for me, really, so that I get some sex sooner or later, right? So it's really just for me anyway. And this is the trouble with a lot of cancers, is this is why there's so much body response to it, because it is an unloving emotion driving the cancer, and therefore it's going to be affecting your own body, because of it being an unloving emotion for you. So every cancer has this dynamic, and so rather than talking about sort of where it appears, because obviously where it appears is going to have a specific way in which you are attempting to get that approval or acceptance or love, or, chest, love, bowel, worth. What do you reckon bladder might be? Sexual worth. So, yeah. So, just depending on where it is in your body, head, using your mind to get these things. Some people get cancers in their legs. That's a lot about running around and doing things for people, but being angry about it the entire time. Yeah. But having to do it because it makes you feel good about yourself when you get the approval and things like that. So it just depends very much upon the location in your body as to where the cancer will first appear. Then obviously with cancer, the trouble is, it's your body eating away at itself, causing your own death. And so fundamentally, you would rather die than deal with the emotion.
Then give up the addiction.
In other words, rather die than feel the causal emotion, right? So everyone with cancer has this general feeling they'd rather die than deal with that emotion. That emotion to them is worse than death. Right? Now, if it's in the cervix, then obviously it's another sexually related one, right? And so I won't go into all the details because it's just like you can get cancer pretty much in any part of your body, right? But it just depends upon where it started, but the emotion is just the same. You want to do something in order to get something for yourself, and in the process, you're sort of manipulating people around you to give you the thing that you're unwilling to go through, the feeling that you don't have.
Yeah. And very unwilling to ask for.
And very unwilling to ask for even.
Yeah.
Very unwilling to even just have a conversation about it. Yet most people with cancer won't even have the conversation. They'll die rather than have a conversation. That's how strong the emotion is. Yeah. But getting back to this, again, all about controlling, in the case of cancer, one specific emotion. But as you control it in your soul, what happens in your soul? Your soul envelops your two bodies. And of course, when an emotion is blocked in a specific area of your soul, that blockage will relate to specific areas of your body. So if you're, let's say, with a person with bowel cancer, they will have a blockage of worth. They want worth from someone else. They're not prepared to let go of the reason why they don't have any worth, and they're not prepared to feel they don't have worth. They're not prepared to go through those emotions. They'd rather die than feel those emotions. So that causes a blockage in the area of the soul that controls the energy systems of the spirit body in that location of the bowel. And then what happens is the bowel then starts decaying because it hasn't got enough energy to maintain and restore itself. You all know that your body replaces its cells every 7 years, right? Every cell in your body completely different in 7 years' time. And many cells in your body get replaced within weeks. So skin, for example, within weeks. Some organs, softer tissue organs, generally within weeks, the cells will replace. And this process is interfered with by the blockage of emotion in the soul. So what happens is when there's a blockage in the soul at a certain location that is connected to the energy system in your soul, supplies energy to your body. So if that energy is coming into your bowel region to supply energy to that bowel region and you've blocked off the emotion, you stop the emotion from flowing in that region, then now naturally that area of your body can no longer sustain itself without that energy. And so it's going to begin decaying. Now, how it decays depends on what type of emotional injury you're suppressing. Cancers are all about eating away yourself, right? Overdoing things for yourself in order to get something from someone else, right? So that's the underlying reason for the body eating away itself. Other diseases depend on what kind of emotion and what kind of effect you want with that emotion, like what kind of thing you're trying to achieve. We know one lady, she passed now.
I don't know who you're referring to, sorry.
In Sweden, the lady.
Yes,
she's
yeah,
passed,
yeah.
hasn't she? We met her. She told us through she was wheelchair. She had ALS, wheelchair bound, had to be fed, manoeuvred everywhere. But she had one of those typewriters where you could with a mouth, and she told us what process began her rage, and what it was her partner cheated on her and lied about it to her.
Well, I think he had done it repetitively,
And he'd done
told
it
her.
repetitively, and eventually he told her, and then he told her that he'd done it many, many times, and she became so enraged by it, but she wouldn't feel her rage. She refused to feel how angry she was about it. She didn't want to leave him either. She instead wanted to punish him. And her rage caused her to get into this state. And within 2 months after that event, she had ALS. In 2 months, she's now passed. We've talked to her since she passed, and she's starting to understand the reasons why she had it and things like that. We tried to talk to her at the time, but of course she didn't understand what we were even saying about it. She was in such a rage about what he'd done. And the irony was, he looked after her to her death, but he still cheated on her very regularly all the way through the whole thing. Yeah. So the very thing that she was avoiding her rage from, she attracted every single week. There was another carer come in, he'd have sex with her. Another carer come in, he'd have sex with her. And yeah. Right? And her rage just built and built and built and built, naturally, but she still was not willing to express it, even in her wheelchair, unwilling to express it. Yeah. Make sense? Yeah. So, these are things that happen when you control emotion. Very dangerous to your life, to your body, to your future, to your, future existence in terms of your spiritual development and your emotional development. Just dangerous on almost every level. Yeah.
Now, Mandy had a question here.
Oh, that's right. Mandy was next. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. I actually had two things, and it's about kids. The first one is when your child is like angry and blaming you or blaming people.
Yep.
For little things. I struggle with holding up the law with that behavior.